Shalom to the elect of Israel, to the whole flock of Israel, you Hebrew Israelites, you so-called Negroes, Latinos, Native Americans, West Indians, and Haitians. Got to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh by Hashem Yahweh Shah. The Most High, the Heavenly Father, his Hebrew name is Yahweh. Not Yahweh, not Jehovah, not God, not Elohim, not Most High, not Lord, not Yah, not Jah, not Ahaya, not Allah, not Abba, not Yahuwah, not Hashem, not Yahweh, Yahweh, Vave. It's Yahweh. And his only begotten son name in the Hebrew is Yahweh Shah. Not Yahshua, not Yeshua, not Jesus Christos, not Jesus Christ, not Serapis Christos, not Yeshaya, not Yehoshua, not Yahusha, not Yeshua, not Jesus Christos. It's Yahweh Shah. So I got to give all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahashem Yahweh Shah, Bahashem Rekah Kodash. Double honors to the apostles, elder bishop, and elders of great millstone, who rule well, who teach well, who are the apostles and elders of all of Israel, whether accepted or not. And a sincere salutation to all that can believe in this truth and pushing this truth. But the four winds of the earth, the entire world, shed light to the whole elect. Shalom to the outworld who are listening learning. You feel sister who are listening learning. I'm Isaiah from GMS Orlando Camp, coming at you now lesson the truth, facts, faith, and edification, no data edification. Lord wants to be edifying. This is copyright disclaimer under Section 107, the Copyright Act 1976. Allowances made for fair use for purposes such as criticism, comment, news reporting, teaching, scholarship, and research. Fair use is a use permitted by copyright statute that might otherwise be infringing non-profit educational or personal use tips to balance in favor of fair use. This is for educational purposes only. This is not for monetary gain. I do not own the copyright to these videos. This is for educational purposes only. This is not for monetary gain. Lord, wouldn't it be edifying?
The parking lot starts filling up.
This is the America that we now see it as it's crumbling.
Around 9:30 p.m. First, the old RVs roll in. Then the minivans with blankets covering the windows. Then the workers, security guards, Uber drivers, Amazon warehouse employees, retired couples, families with kids already asleep in the back seats. This is happening all across America in 2026. And the number that should scare people is this. Nearly 900,000 Americans are now estimated to be living in vehicles, RVs, vans, campers, SUVs, or cars because traditional housing has become financially unreachable for them. Not because they want freedom, not because they're digital nomads, not because they watch van life videos on social media, because rent broke the math. A one-bedroom apartment that cost $1,200 a few years ago is now pushing $2,000 in many cities. Wages didn't rise with it. Food prices exploded. Insurance exploded. Fuel exploded. And suddenly millions of people discovered something terrifying. You can work full-time and still not afford a place to live. That changes everything. The American middle class used to believe homelessness was something that happened after addiction, mental illness, or total collapse. But vehicle homelessness shattered that idea. Now, the fastest growing homeless groups in America are workers, seniors, and families with children, people who still wake up at 6 a.m. and go to work, people who still pay taxes, people who still try to look normal. And that's exactly why this crisis stayed invisible for so long. A tent city scares politicians because everyone can see it. But parking lot full of quiet workers sleeping inside Toyotas and old RVs? That's easier to ignore until the numbers become impossible. In Santa Clara County, the heart of Silicon Valley, the percentage of homeless people living in vehicles more than doubled after the pandemic, jumping from 18% to 37%. Think about what that means. One of the richest regions in human history now has workers sleeping in parking lots outside billion-dollar tech campuses because housing costs became detached from reality. This is a contradiction nobody wants to admit. America did not run out of jobs. America ran out of affordable shelter. And once rent rises faster than wages for long enough, homelessness stops being an individual failure and becomes a system outcome. Researchers studying homelessness in 2026 are increasingly pointing to housing costs as a main driver, especially in cities where rents surged, but housing supply stayed frozen. That's a hidden engine underneath this entire crisis. People imagine homelessness as a sudden collapse, but for most vehicle dwellers, it happens slowly. First comes the rent increase, then the second job, then the maxed out credit cards, then sleeping in the car temporarily, then months pass, then years. One Reddit user wrote, "Employment stops being a safety net. It becomes something you can still fall through." That sentence explains modern America better than most politicians can, because the old system assumed work guaranteed stability. The new system doesn't. And once someone moves into a vehicle, a brutal new economy begins. Every tiny mechanical problem becomes a housing emergency. Transmission failure? You're homeless and now your house is dead. Flat tire? You might lose your job because your shelter can't move. Engine overheating? Now you're choosing between repairs and food. People living in RVs describe constantly calculating survival in real time. Fuel, parking tickets, towing risks, repairs, propane registration fees, insurance, campground costs, police sweeps. One engine failure away from the sidewalk. That's not a metaphor anymore. And unlike apartments, RVs are not designed for permanent human life. Pipes fail, roofs leak, heat becomes unbearable, winter becomes dangerous. Families ration electricity and water every day. But here's what makes this darker. The country is quietly adapting to this instead of fixing it. Cities are now creating safe parking programs where homeless Americans can legally sleep inside vehicles overnight in monitored lots. Read that again carefully. America is now formalizing car sleeping infrastructure because standard housing became inaccessible to so many people. That's not a temporary glitch. That's systemic adaptation. And there's another layer most people still don't see. An entire shadow housing market is emerging around this crisis. In California, so-called vanlords are renting broken RVs to desperate people for hundreds of dollars per month without leases, tenant protections, or sanitation standards. Think about how insane that is. People are now becoming landlords of collapsing vehicles parked on public streets because even that has become profitable. That only happens when a housing system is under extreme pressure, and pressure keeps building. Cities across America are simultaneously cracking down on vehicle dwellers, while also failing to provide enough housing alternatives. San Francisco introduced strict 2-hour parking restrictions targeting RV living. Colorado Springs made vehicle camping illegal on public property. Other cities are increasing towing operations and overnight parking bans. So where exactly are people supposed to go? That's the question underneath every sweep, every tow, every parking ban. Because removing the vehicle does not remove the poverty that created it. It just removes the last layer of protection before full street homelessness. And many officials know this. Even city governments now openly admit that people living in vehicles include workers, seniors, families, domestic violence survivors, and people destroyed by medical debt or rent spikes. But public frustration is rising too. Neighborhoods complain about trash, sewage dumping, crime, fires, and deteriorating streets. Some residents feel abandoned by local governments. Others fear falling into the same situation themselves. That creates a political deadlock. Nobody wants massive RV encampments. But nobody can explain how people survive $2,000 rent with stagnant wages either. And this is where the illusion finally breaks. For years, van life was sold online as freedom, minimalism, adventure, escape from the system. But real vehicle homelessness looks very different. It looks like parents waiting for gym memberships to shower before work. It looks like seniors hiding from parking enforcement at 3 a.m. It looks like children doing homework under battery-powered lights. It looks like workers trying to appear clean enough, so nobody discovers they slept inside a Ford Explorer the night before. The scary part is not just the suffering. The scary part is how normalized this is becoming. Because once a society accepts vehicles as permanent housing for hundreds of thousands of working people, the standard for what counts as economic stability quietly collapses. And most Americans still don't understand how close they are to that edge themselves. One layoff, one medical bill, one rent increase, one transmission failure. That's all it takes now. The most disturbing part of America's RV homelessness crisis is not the poverty. It's the fact that many of the people living this way are still doing everything society told them to do. They work. They pay taxes. They stay sober. They try to save money. Some even have college degrees. And yet every night, Hundreds of thousands of them still crawl into overheated vans, leaking campers, or broken-down RVs parked behind warehouses and grocery stores because the housing market no longer matches reality. That changes the meaning of homelessness itself. For decades, Americans imagined homelessness as complete detachment from society. No job, no routine, no structure. But the new homeless economy looks different. In 2026, huge numbers of vehicle dwellers are connected to the workforce every single day. Amazon workers sleep in parking lots before warehouse shifts. Traveling nurses rotate between hospital contracts while living in RVs because temporary housing costs too much. Delivery drivers park overnight near distribution hubs to save fuel. Security guards sleep in cars between shifts because commuting from distant affordable towns became impossible. This is no longer outside the economy. This is the economy adapting to collapse conditions inside itself. That's why experts are increasingly calling vehicle homelessness a labor issue as much as a housing issue, because companies continue operating while workers quietly lose access to stable shelter. And businesses benefit from this more than people realize. Think about it. When workers become desperate enough to sleep in vehicles, they become easier to exploit. They tolerate longer commutes, unstable schedules, low wages, unsafe conditions. Why? Because survival becomes immediate. You stop negotiating when your house has wheels. One warehouse worker in California described it perfectly. You don't quit bad jobs when your entire life fits inside a parking space. That's the hidden pressure underneath modern labor markets. Housing insecurity weakens worker bargaining power. And this is happening while corporate profits remain enormous in many sectors. Meanwhile, the average American worker is being squeezed from every direction at once. Rent eats half their paycheck. Groceries rise faster than inflation, reports admit. Auto insurance spikes. Medical debt keeps growing. Interest rates punish anyone carrying credit card balances. Then there's the vehicle itself. The same car keeping someone alive is also draining them financially every month. Gas, repairs, registration, maintenance, parking fines. Vehicle homelessness creates a survival loop where the shelter itself constantly threatens to fail. That's why mechanics have become strangely important figures inside this crisis. A reliable mechanic can literally keep someone housed. An RV transmission replacement can cost $4,000 to $8,000. Engine repairs can wipe out someone's entire savings instantly. Even simple breakdowns become catastrophic when the vehicle is also your bedroom, storage unit, transportation, and legal address. And this is creating another dangerous shift inside America. People are starting to treat unstable living conditions as financially rational. That's the key change. 5 years ago, living in a vehicle sounded extreme to most middle-class Americans. Now, many openly compare it against apartment prices and conclude the vehicle is the better option. That's not because vehicle life improved. It's because housing became absurd. In parts of California, Florida, Washington, Arizona, and Colorado, workers are doing brutal calculations every month. Do I spend 70% of my income on rent or buy an old RV and survive? That question alone shows how distorted the market became. And social media accidentally helped normalize this transition. For years, influencers sold van life as aesthetic freedom. Beautiful sunsets, tiny kitchens, mountain views, young couples living off-grid with remote tech jobs. But that fantasy blurred the line between voluntary nomadic living and economic displacement. Now, people who are functionally homeless often describe themselves as traveling because the stigma feels smaller. That matters psychologically. America still treats homelessness as moral failure. So many vehicle dwellers avoid using the word entirely, even when they have no permanent address. Researchers have noticed this too. Large numbers of vehicle dwellers remain statistically hidden because they avoid shelters, avoid services, and continue working. Many are never fully counted in official homeless data. That means the real number may be far higher than public estimates. And then there are the children. This is where the crisis becomes impossible to ignore. An estimated hundreds of thousands of children across America are now experiencing some form of vehicle or unstable housing situation each year. Families rotate between motel rooms, cars, RVs, campgrounds, and temporary parking areas while trying to keep kids enrolled in school. Imagine being 11 years old and try and pretend everything is normal while your family searches for a legal overnight parking spot every evening. Kids learn fast in survival environments. They learn which Walmart parking lots are safer, which gyms allow showers, which police patrols knock on windows at night, which parking lots get flooded with noise after midnight. Some children become experts at hiding homelessness from classmates because they know exposure can bring shame, bullying, or intervention from authorities. And parents live with constant fear. Fear of losing custody, fear of police encounters, fear of the vehicle breaking down, fear of someone noticing. A mother interviewed during a safe parking program described waking up every 2 hours to check whether security or police were approaching the vehicle. That level of stress changes people physically over time. Sleep deprivation, anxiety, depression, isolation. But here's the darker layer most people still miss. Vehicle homelessness destroys long-term financial recovery. Why? Because stability itself becomes impossible. You can't build savings when emergencies happen constantly. You can't easily apply for jobs without addresses. You can't safely store belongings. You can't maintain health properly. You can't sleep deeply. Everything becomes short-term survival management. And once someone enters that loop, climbing back out becomes brutally difficult. That's why so many vehicle dwellers slowly drift deeper into poverty instead of recovering. Not because they stop trying, because instability compounds. A missed registration payment leads to tickets. Tickets become debt. Debt affects credit. Bad credit blocks housing applications. No housing keeps the cycle going. This is how modern poverty works now. Not sudden collapse. Continuous erosion. And while all this happens, cities are fighting over appearances. Some communities push for compassion programs. Others demand aggressive enforcement. The result is a strange national contradiction. America depends on low-wage workers more than ever. But many of the places needing those workers most have become financially unlivable for them. Tourist towns can't find staff because workers can't afford local rent. Restaurant employees sleep in vans near beach communities. Hospital workers commute from distant counties because nearby housing became luxury property. The economy keeps functioning by quietly consuming the stability of its workers. That's the machine underneath this crisis. And there's another reason RV homelessness keeps growing. The used RV market exploded after the pandemic. Old campers that once sold for a few $1,000s suddenly became survival assets. Demand surged because people realized an RV could function as emergency housing during economic instability. But even this safety valve is breaking down now. Insurance costs are climbing. RV parks are full. Cities are banning overnight parking. Repair costs are exploding. And many older RVs are mechanically collapsing after years of constant use. So the last affordable housing option is becoming unstable too. That's the terrifying trajectory here. The ladder keeps disappearing one rung at a time. Apartments became unaffordable. Motels became unaffordable. Campgrounds became overcrowded. Now even vehicle survival is getting harder. And millions of Americans are watching this happen while realizing nobody in power seems capable of reversing it. Because fixing this crisis would require confronting something politicians avoid at all costs. The possibility that full-time work no longer guarantees housing in modern America. America keeps talking about homelessness like it's a personal failure, but the numbers coming out in 2026 tell a different story. The average rent for a one-bedroom apartment in many major U.S. cities now sits far above what minimum wage workers can realistically afford. In some regions, even people earning double the minimum wage are struggling to qualify for leases. And landlords know it. Most apartments now require proof that tenants earn 3 times the monthly rent. That means a $2,000 apartment often requires an income of $72,000 per year just to apply. Not to buy, not to own, just to be allowed through the door. Now compare that to reality. Millions of Americans working in retail, delivery, caregiving, hospitality, warehouse labor, security, food service, and healthcare support jobs make nowhere near that amount. So what happens? People start stacking survival strategies. roommates, second jobs, credit cards, payday loans, sleeping in vehicles, rotating parking lots, until eventually the entire line between working class and homeless starts dissolving. That's exactly what's happening now. And seniors are being hit especially hard. For decades, Americans were told retirement would mean stability after a lifetime of work. Instead, many older Americans are entering retirement with rising rents, medical debt, tiny pensions, and Social Security payments that no longer match housing costs. So now elderly people are living inside RVs at levels the country has never seen before. Some spend retirement driving between parking lots trying to avoid tickets and towing. Others stay hidden inside aging campers in desert communities where rent is cheaper and enforcement is weaker. People call them nomads, but many aren't traveling for freedom. They're retreating financially. That distinction matters. A retired couple living in an RV near Quartzsite, Arizona, explained it bluntly. We didn't choose this lifestyle. We adjusted to what we could still afford. That sentence captures the emotional core of this entire crisis. Adjustment. Americans are adjusting downward, adjusting expectations, adjusting comfort, adjusting dignity, adjusting privacy, little by little. And because it's gradual, society keeps normalizing conditions that would have shocked people 20 years ago. Children sleeping in cars outside schools, workers showering at gyms before shifts, elderly people hiding from parking enforcement, families cooking meals on propane stoves beside industrial areas. The country keeps absorbing these images without fully reacting because the collapse isn't happening all at once. It's happening through adaptation. That's how systems decay quietly, not through one dramatic moment, through millions of people lowering their standards of survival year after year. And the RV crisis exposes another uncomfortable truth. Modern homelessness is increasingly driven by asset inflation. Housing prices surge massively after years of cheap money, investor buying, corporate ownership, and housing shortages. Homes stopped functioning mainly as shelter and became investment vehicles. That changed the entire market psychology. When housing becomes financial speculation first and shelter second, prices disconnect from local wages. And once that happens, workers lose. Investors can absorb rising prices. Corporations can absorb rising prices. High-income professionals can sometimes absorb rising prices, but ordinary workers can't, especially not when healthcare, transportation, insurance, and food costs are also climbing at the same time. That creates what economists sometimes call multi-system pressure. Every survival cost rises together. And when that happens long enough, people start falling through despite working constantly. That's why vehicle homelessness now includes groups Americans once assumed were protected from this kind of instability. Teachers, nurses, government workers, gig workers, veterans, even some people with full-time corporate jobs. The old assumption was, if you work hard, you'll eventually stabilize. But in many parts of America, housing inflation now outpaces personal progress itself. You get promoted, and rent still outruns you. You work overtime, and groceries erase the gain. You save money, then a medical bill wipes it out. This creates a population trapped in permanent economic defense mode, always reacting, never recovering. And psychologically, that changes a country. People stop thinking long-term when survival becomes unstable. Marriage rates drop, birth rates fall, community ties weaken, trust collapses, because stability is what allows humans to plan futures. Without stability, people shrink their lives down to immediate survival. That's one reason vehicle homelessness feels so emotionally heavy even for people watching from the outside. Deep down, many Americans recognize themselves in it. They know they're financially fragile too. According to recent surveys, huge portions of Americans still struggle to cover unexpected emergency expenses without debt. Millions live paycheck to paycheck despite employment. So when people see workers sleeping in RVs, they don't just see other people anymore. They see proximity. And that's politically dangerous. Because societies become unstable when large populations feel economically replaceable and permanently insecure. Historically, housing stability was one of the foundations that kept modern societies functioning. People tolerated difficult jobs partly because stable homes created psychological security. Now that foundation is cracking. And there's another reason the RV crisis keeps expanding. Local governments are trapped. Cities want homelessness reduced. Residents want streets cleared. Businesses want cleaner commercial zones. But affordable housing construction remains painfully slow and politically controversial in many areas. So politicians often choose visible enforcement instead of structural fixes. Parking bans, vehicle towing, anti-camping ordinances, overnight restrictions. The logic is simple. Move the problem somewhere else. But displacement doesn't solve economic imbalance. It just redistributes suffering geographically. That's why vehicle dwellers are constantly moving now. 1 week near Walmart, next week outside an industrial park, then near a church, then near desert land, then back into the city for work. A huge hidden migration system has quietly formed underneath America's official economy. People chasing legal parking, cheap fuel, temporary safety, jobs, water access, electric hookups, survival geography, and technology intensified this strange new reality. Apps now help people locate overnight parking zones, safe sleeping areas, shower access, and vehicle-friendly locations. Entire online communities exchange information about which cities are more hostile, which police departments tow aggressively, which parking lots tolerate overnight stays. Think about how extraordinary that is. America now has informal survival networks dedicated to helping employed homeless people remain mobile. That's not normal economic behavior. That's adaptation to systemic stress. Meanwhile, corporations continue selling luxury fantasies around RV culture. Massive RV trade shows still advertise freedom, exploration, and adventure, while many buyers are increasingly purchasing RVs as emergency housing backups. The symbolism flipped completely. The RV used to represent leisure. Now, for many Americans, it represents economic fallback. And perhaps the most chilling part of all this is the age divide. Young Americans increasingly believe traditional milestones may never happen for them. Home ownership feels impossible. Rent feels unstable. Retirement feels fictional. Debt feels permanent. So vehicle living starts looking less like crisis and more like preparation. That shift in mindset is massive. Once younger generations stop believing stability is achievable through normal work pathways, the entire social contract weakens. Because societies depend on people believing effort leads somewhere. But what happens when millions stop believing that? That question is sitting underneath every parking lot filled with sleeping vehicles in America tonight. What makes this crisis feel different in 2026 is that Americans are no longer arguing about whether the system is strained. They're arguing about whether the old version of normal life is even recoverable anymore, because the numbers stopped making sense. People see it every day now. A teacher commuting 2 hours because local rent is impossible. A nurse sleeping in an RV between shifts. A delivery driver working 12-hour days while parked behind shopping centers at night. Families with full-time incomes still unable to pass apartment income requirements. This is not fringe poverty anymore. This is economic compression spreading directly into the working population. And the speed matters. For years, experts warned that housing costs rising faster than wages would eventually destabilize society. But most Americans assumed the correction would come naturally. They believed the market would balance itself. Instead, prices kept climbing. Investors kept buying. Corporate ownership expanded. Construction lagged. Insurance costs exploded. Property taxes rose. Interest rates surged. And ordinary workers absorbed the damage. That's why so many people describe the current economy as impossible. Because mathematically, for many households, it is a person earning $20 an hour full-time brings in roughly $3,200 before taxes each month. Now subtract rent, utilities, gas, food, insurance, phone bills, medical costs, debt payments. There's almost nothing left. One emergency pushes the entire structure over. And once somebody falls into vehicle living, escaping becomes brutally difficult because the economy punishes instability at every level. No permanent address can affect employment paperwork. Poor sleep affects performance. Constant movement affects mental health. Mechanical breakdowns destroy savings. Police encounters create fines. Fines create debt. Debt destroys housing applications. The system compounds failure faster than recovery. That's why so many vehicle dwellers describe feeling trapped in suspended survival. Not fully homeless in the traditional sense, but never secure either. Always temporary. Always uncertain. Always one problem away from collapse. And that uncertainty changes behavior. People stop taking risks. Stop having children. Stop planning futures. Stop trusting institutions. Because institutions increasingly feel absent. Many Americans now believe nobody is truly solving the housing crisis, only managing its visibility. Cities create safe parking lots because shelters are overcrowded. Nonprofits distribute hygiene kits because stable housing isn't available. Police move encampments from one district to another because there's nowhere permanent to place people. The entire system has become reactive instead of preventive. And underneath it all sits a deeper fear people rarely say out loud. If this can happen to working people now, who's actually safe? That question is why the RV crisis hits such a nerve emotionally. Americans were raised on a specific promise. Work hard, stay responsible, and you will maintain stability. But vehicle homelessness is exposing the limits of that promise in real time, not for everyone, but for enough people to shake public confidence. And confidence matters more than most governments admit. Modern economies run partly on belief. Belief that effort leads upward. Belief that sacrifice creates security. Belief that the next generation will live better than the previous one. When those beliefs weaken, social trust weakens too. You can already see the signs everywhere. Young adults delaying families indefinitely. Workers burning out faster. Record loneliness. Growing anger toward institutions. Exploding distrust online. People emotionally disconnecting from the future itself. Economic instability doesn't just damage bank accounts. It changes how entire populations think. And vehicle homelessness has become one of the clearest physical symbols of that shift. Because cars were never supposed to become permanent shelter for working families. Parking lots were never supposed to become communities. Children were never supposed to grow up memorizing which businesses allow overnight parking. Yet, here America is. And the strange thing is how quiet much of this looks from the outside. There's no single dramatic collapse scene. Just thousands of ordinary people quietly adapting downward every month. Living smaller, driving farther, owning less, expecting less. That's why the crisis spread so far before many people noticed it. Vehicle homelessness hides itself. An RV blends into traffic. A van disappears on side streets. A family sleeping inside an SUV looks invisible in a crowded parking lot. But invisibility does not mean small. It means normalized. And normalization is powerful. History shows that societies can slowly absorb conditions once considered unacceptable if the deterioration happens gradually enough. That's exactly what's happening now. People are adapting to instability instead of eliminating it. And businesses are adapting too. Some gyms quietly know members are using showers because they live in vehicles. Certain parking lots tolerate overnight sleeping because local workers need somewhere to stay. Employers increasingly understand that parts of their workforce are housing insecure. The economy is learning how to operate around homelessness instead of preventing it. That may be the most alarming shift of all. Because once a system fully adapts to mass instability, reversing it becomes much harder. And there's still another layer underneath this crisis. Climate pressure. Extreme heat is turning vehicles into ovens during summer. Wildfires are displacing more people into temporary vehicle living. Hurricanes and floods are wiping out fragile housing situations faster. Insurance costs in disaster-prone states keep rising. All of this increases pressure on people already living near the edge. The RV becomes both shelter and vulnerability at the same time. And experts increasingly warn that America's affordable housing shortage is still growing faster than solutions are being built. That means the invisible million may not stay invisible much longer. More workers, more seniors, more families, More people quietly sleeping behind tinted windows, while holding jobs a country depends on every day, not because they rejected society, because society priced them out of stable shelter. And maybe that's the hardest part to accept. This crisis did not appear overnight. It was built slowly through decades of rising inequality, speculative housing markets, wage stagnation, debt dependence, weak safety nets, and political paralysis. The RV became the pressure valve at the end of that chain, a movable last resort, a final barrier between working poverty and the sidewalk. But even that barrier is starting to crack now. And if America cannot figure out how to make housing attainable for ordinary workers again, this crisis will keep spreading far beyond parking lots and RV parks. Because eventually society reaches a dangerous point when shelter itself becomes unstable for the people keeping the economy running. That's not van life. That's a warning sign.
So because of Esau Edom's actions in the beginning, when he despised his birthright, now the blessing, which was a temporary blessing, is now becoming a curse. So let's get this. This is Ecclesiastes 14:5. It reads, "He that is evil to himself, to whom will he be good? He shall not take pleasure in his goods." See, now there is no more pleasure in the system of the self-proclaimed so-called white man. Going back to Esau, despising his birthright. So let's play this next clip.
You know what we need to motherfucking do? We need to stop pushing Americans past their fucking breaking point!
Americans are burnt out. You can see it on people's faces, man.
United States citizens are leaving the U.S. and going to other countries. People are pretty much giving up on the American dream.
Honestly, I want to leave the U.S. so bad.
I'm giving up my slave to the system card and I'm moving myself to Southeast Asia.
Reminder, this is the first time since 1935 that the U.S. has had more people leaving it than coming in.
Millions of Americans are quietly giving up. Not because they're lazy, but because life keeps getting harder no matter how much they work. The middle class is starting to realize the American dream feels less like a promise and more like a bill that never stops growing.
You know what we need to motherfucking do? We need to stop pushing Americans past their fucking breaking point! It's literally starting to feel like the new American dream is to leave. Like, we're so cooked beyond repair at this point, like it's not even funny.
The U.S. just seems to be getting in a worse state socially, economically, and all of the above. So really, the method, I believe, is to just make as much money as possible in the United States and just to get the fuck out of here.
You tell people are just burnt out now. People just burned out. Americans are burnt out. You can see it on people's faces, man.
Housing costs, groceries, insurance, debt, and the basic survival have all become heavier at the same time. People are cutting back, working more, and still feel like they're barely staying above water.
Living in America right now feels like a punishment. You wake up already behind, you go to work just to stay broke, and you watch the cost of everything rise while your paycheck doesn't move an inch. Groceries are a luxury, rent is robbery, healthcare is a joke, and somehow we're the ones blamed for not budgeting better. People are working 2-3 jobs and still choosing between food or gas. Families are crammed into apartments because buying a house became a fantasy.
Americans are buying now, paying later. About 1 in 4 Americans are often or occasionally paying in installments when they buy things online, a figure that rises among people who are worried about their finances. 37% of lower income Americans report using installment plans either frequently or occasionally.
So Americans have been attacked for years and years and years. They've been threatened and they've been terrorized, and all these people that have came here and just do what they want and say what they want and attack whoever they want to and do whatever they want to do. And Americans are getting tired of it. And there's going to come a point in time where Americans start to push back.
Reminder, this is the first time since 1935 that the U.S. has had more people leaving it than coming in. There's an exodus of Americans leaving the United States for the first time in a very fucking long time. If that's not a wake-up call, people, I don't know what is.
The world is about to get a lot worse very fast, and if you haven't started preparing yet, your window is closing. The cost of basic survival is already rising, and by winter, millions of Americans are going to start to feel it. Right now, you need to focus on the basics: water, food, heat, power, fuel. You need at least 2 weeks of water and 2 weeks of food stored for every single person in your family, your group, or anyone else you plan on helping when things get bad.
I feel like living in America is like you're living in some sort of pyramid scheme, unaffordable scam these days. Like, don't get me wrong, I know there's worse places to live. Like, this country's not that bad, but it's morphing into something I don't recognize because I can't afford groceries, you can't afford to buy gas, you can't afford to buy hardly any of the luxuries of this life. Entertainment, stuff like that is absolutely outrageous. Going to a movie by yourself is like a $40 night now, which is absolutely stupid. You can't afford to buy a house. If you can afford to buy a house, then you got to pay property taxes on the house. You get taxed to death. They take almost 40% of your income. That's for middle America, the median household income, which is absolutely ridiculous. I think most taxes are scams anyway. Then you have insurance. If you get into an accident, get cancer, something terrible happens to you, your insurance probably is not going to cover you, or they're going to try not to cover you. Or if you have a barn and your barn blows down, they're going to send an insurance adjuster out to your house to tell you why they're not going to cover it because you should have done this, this, and this. Insurance is an absolute scam. It's one of the biggest scams in the world, in my opinion. Insurance is so stupid.
This is not just happening to people who made bad choices. A lot of Americans did what they were told to do, got jobs, paid bills, avoided luxury, and still ended up financially stressed.
Americans are now just giving up. We don't know what to do. We don't know how to pay off our credit cards. We're struggling to pay for an expensive house that is much more expensive than we ever realized. We're struggling to pay off car loans. Many people can't even get insurance for their cars. Even health insurance is becoming a problem.
This is something we got to talk about. United States citizens are leaving the U.S. and going to other countries. Whether it's Ghana, whether it's Thailand, whether it's Tokyo, you're starting to see it more and more. This is not a drill. This is happening. And for whatever reason, people are pretty much giving up on the American dream.
The boomer generation.
So yeah, I want to make that point. You get these precepts. This is which I'm going to read this again. Sirach 14:5. He that is evil to himself, to whom will he be good? He shall not take pleasure in his goods. And this is their system. This is their kingdom. This is theirs. And mostly who you see is catching hell is the so-called white man and woman. Let's get see, it was beautiful in the beginning. Oh, as a matter of fact, this is why Trump said this. It's Ecclesiastes 7 in verse 10. It reads, "Say not thou, what is the cause that the former days were better than these? For thou doest not inquire wisely concerning this." And why is it not concerning wisely? Understanding what this is saying. Say not thou, what is the cause that the former days were better than these? For thou doest not inquire wisely concerning this. Which is Trump's slogan was, "Make America Great Again." See, when was America great? When they had total power and you so-called Negroes, Latinos, Native Americans, West Indians, and Haitians were slaves. You were servants. That's when America was great. And even then it wasn't good because the so-called white man had to go to work. Which is, what's this, Henry Ford with the $4 week, the $4 day, right? Making a good check. The woman can stay at home, the man make the money, and they both had vehicles, right? Now, that was the so-called good days of America. Well, the Lord say, and he say not thou, what is it called? The former days were better than these. What we trying to go is to tell you in this is there was never no good days here in America for you so-called Negroes, Latinos, Native Americans, West Indians, and Haitians. It was never no good days. Oh, that's Philippians. Well, we go to Philippians 3. It reads this. Philippians 3 and verse 13, right? It reads, brethren, I count not myself to have apprehended, but this one thing I do, forgetting those things which are behind. What's behind us? The great days of America, allegedly. That's behind us, man. And reaching forth unto those things which are before, which is the kingdom. Because before the so-called white man was in power, before the so-called Babylonians and the Medes and Persians and the Romans and the Greeks, we was dwelling by ourselves, man. So again, brethren, I count not myself to have apprehended, but this one thing I do, forgetting those things which are behind, and reaching forth into those things which are before. So, ain't no more making America great again, man. It's over. This is Proverbs 20 and 21. It reads, an inheritance, which is land, when you look up inheritance, an inheritance may be gotten hastily at the beginning, but at the end thereof shall not be blessed. Hey, and to tell you, how did the so-called white man get the earth? He got it hastily. First Maccabees 1 in verse 1, and it happened after that Alexander, son of Philip the Macedonian, which is trailer park, trash. Macedonia was a trailer park, man, who came out of the land of Shittim, and had smitten Darius, king of the Persians and Medes, that he reigned his stead the first over Greece, and made many wars, and won many strongholds, and slew the kings of the earth, and went through to the ends of the earth, and took spoils of many nations. So here it is, Alexander conquered all of Asia, Asia Minor, all of Asia, and went through the ends of the earth, and took spoils of many nations, insomuch that the earth, Asia, was quiet before him, whereupon he was exalted, and his heart was lifted up. And he gathered a mighty strong host, and ruled over countries and nations and kings. And and kings who became tributaries unto him. See? So it's telling you here that the earth, let me see here. Yeah. Let's read this. It's a verse. Hold on, bear with me. Yeah, reading this again. It say verse 2, and made many wars and won many strongholds, and slew the kings of the earth, and went through to the ends of the earth, and took spoils of many nations, insomuch that the earth was quiet before him, whereupon he was exalted, and his heart was lifted up. And when you read the account of Alexander, it said the earth was quiet before him. When you go and read that account, he didn't have nobody else to conquer, man. He didn't have nothing else to conquer. And as the saying is, well, the story is, that was written that his men, he wanted to keep continuing, but it was nothing else to conquer, so they had to turn around and go back and enjoy the spoils. But he wanted to keep conquering, but that was it. That was his reign of terror was over to conquer Asia. When you go here to Habakkuk 1 and 6, it reads, for lo, I raised up I raised up the Chaldeans, that bitter and hasty nation. So you got the ancient Chaldeans, but you got the modern day Chaldeans, which is the so-called white man, the Edomites. For lo, I raised up the Chaldeans, that bitter and hasty nation. And this bitter and hasty nation is the so-called white man. What it said in Proverbs 20 and 21? Let's read this again. Proverbs 20 and 21, it reads, an inheritance may be gotten hastily at the beginning. See, that hasty and bitter nation. That bitter and hasty nation. An inheritance may be gotten hastily at the beginning, but the end of the world shall not be blessed. So now we're at the end of the so-called white man's kingdom, and it's not blessed, man. Back in Habakkuk 1 and 6. For lo, I raise up the Chaldeans, that bitter and hasty nation, which shall march through the breadth of the land to possess the dwelling places that are not theirs. And what Alexander do? He conquered all the places that was not his. It reads, they are terrible and dreadful. It said they are terrible and dreadful, that judgment and their dignity shall proceed in themselves. Their horses are swifter than the leopards, and are more fierce than the evening wolves. And it's the reason leopards is there, because the beginning rulership of the so-called white man was with the Greeks. Their horses are swifter than the leopards, and are more fierce than the evening wolves, and their horsemen shall spread themselves, which is their military. And like now, America's military is spread thin, just like the Roman Empire military was. And their horses shall spread themselves. Over 800 military bases around the world, which Iran is decimating them now. And their horsemen shall come from far. They shall fly as the eagle that hasteneth to eat. They shall come all for violence. Their faces shall sup up as the east wind. And they shall gather the captivity as the sand. And they shall scoff at the kings. What it said in 1 Maccabees 1, he conquered many nations and kings. And they shall scoff at the kings, and the princes shall be a scorn unto them. And they shall deride every stronghold, for they shall heap dust and take it. See, they shall deride every stronghold, which Alexander did. So now, we seeing their fall, man. This is Job 24 and 18. It reads, he is swift as the waters, the so-called white man. Their portion is cursed in the earth. Why? He beholdeth not the way of the vineyards. See? This is them. Look at the verse 17, it reads. Matter of fact, let's read 14. It reads, the murderer riseth with the light, killeth the poor and needy, and in the night is as a thief. This is so-called white man. Go read Micah 2 and 1. Proverbs 4 was that Proverbs 4 and 16. The eye also of the adulterer waited for the twilight, saying, no eye shall see me, and disguise of his face. And you got a history of the so-called white man putting on black faces. In the dark they dig through houses, which they have marked for themselves in the daytime. They know not the light, for the morning is to them even as the shadow of death. If one know them, they are in the terrors of the shadow of death. He is swift as the waters. Their portion is cursed in the earth. He beholdeth not the way of the vineyard. And this is talking about Esau, Edom, the self-proclaimed so-called white man. Again, Proverbs 20 and 21. And inheritance may be gotten hasty at the beginning, but the end of the world shall not be blessed. So now we seeing that their kingdom is not blessed. This is Proverbs. This is Jeremiah. See, we seen their kingdom was never blessed, man. It was just their turn. Jeremiah 25 and 27. Therefore thou shalt say unto them, thus saith Yahweh of hosts, the God of Israel, drink ye and be drunken, and spew and fall, and rise no more, because of the sword which I will send among you. So now, this sword is Yahweh, the Messiah said in Matthew 24, that these are the beginning of sorrows. So now we see these sorrows that's happening on these Edomites, man. These so-called white people. This is Jeremiah 51. Shame for spewing shall be on their glory, the Lord said. Jeremiah 51:7, behold. So like he said, Babylon had been a golden cup in the Lord's hand that made all the earth drunken. The nations have drunken of her wine, therefore the nations are mad. Babylon is suddenly fallen and destroyed. Howl for her, take balm for her pain. If so be, she may be healed. We would have healed Babylon, but she is not healed. Forsake her and let us go everyone to his own country, meaning people are fleeing from this place. For her judgment reacheth unto heaven and is lifted up even to the skies. So we are watching the curse of Esau, Edom, the self-proclaimed white man, happen in America. We are watching their kingdom crumble, man. Their kingdom is crumbling. Isaiah 24:5. Matter of fact, Isaiah 24:4. The earth mourneth and fadeth away. The world languisheth and fadeth away. Why? Because of the so-called white man. The haughty people of the earth do languish. The earth also is defiled under the inhabitants thereof, because they have transgressed the laws, changed the ordinance, broken the everlasting covenant. Therefore hath the curse devoured the earth, and they that dwell therein are desolate. Therefore the inhabitants of the earth are burned, and few men left. So, and it's because of the rulers, man. Right? Ecclesiasticus chapter 10:1. A wise judge will instruct his people, and the government of a prudent man is well ordered. As the judge of the people is himself, so are his officers. And what manner of man the ruler of the city is, such are all they that dwell therein. An unwise king destroyeth his people, but through the prudence of them which are in authority, the city shall be inhabited. See? So this guy's destroying the earth, man. Let me get 2 Ezra 6. And what was that? So let's read this. 2 Ezra 6 in verse 20. And when the world that shall begin and vanish away shall be finished, then when I show these tokens, the book shall be opened for the firmament, and they shall see all together. So as we're watching the world vanish away, America, Babylon the Great in particular, we are watching this place crumble. And the prophecy is going forth, man. 2 Ezra 14. Look at this, 2 Ezra 14:10. For the world has lost its youth, and the times begin to wax old. See, for the world has lost his youth, and the times begin to wax old. That's why I brought up Proverbs 20:24. Look at this. Yeah, this place is waxing old, man. Proverbs 20:24. Proverbs 20:21. And inheritance may be gotten hastily at the beginning. That's when they were young. But the end thereof shall not be blessed. Hey, so I just saw that. I want to make some points. And Lord was edifying. We give all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bashim, Yahushua, Bahashem, Brekak, Wadash. The honors to the apostles, the elder bishops, and elders, great millstone, who are well, who teach well, who are the apostles and elders of all of Israel, whether accepted or not. And a sincere salutation to all that can believe in this truth and pushing this truth toward the four winds of the earth. The entire world shall like to the whole elect. Shalom to the outworth who are listening, learning. If you sister will listen, learn throughout tuning in. May Yahweh Bashim Yahushua continue to bless you in your houses. May the blessing of Lexi be upon your houses. So next time I say Shalom, Wa Abba Ball. Let me close with these couple precepts. Micah 2:3. Therefore thus saith Yahweh, behold, against this family do I devise an evil, from which ye should not remove your necks. Neither shall ye go haughtily, for this time is evil. And this family is the so-called white man, Esau, Edom, the Edomites. In that day shall one take up a parable against you and lament with a doleful lamentation and say, we be utterly spoiled. He hath changed the portion of my people. How hath he removed it far from me? Turning away, He hath divided our fields. Therefore thou shalt have none that shall cast a cord by lot in the congregation of the Lord. So while Hakah and Hassad trying to say the so-called white man, the Lord say this family, therefore thou shalt have none that shall cast a cord by lot in the congregation of the Lord. Hey, when you go to Deuteronomy 23, it tell you that Moab and Ammon can enter the congregation of the Lord, right? If Moab and Ammon can enter the congregation of the Lord, the Hamites can't enter to the congregation of the Lord. We know the so-called white man can't get in. So who are they trying to save? What heathens are they trying to save? See, the Lord said he devised an evil against this family. Who? The Edomites. This is about the Edomites, man. But Jay trying to say these devils, they cannot be saved. Therefore thou shalt have none that shall cast a cord by lot in the congregation of Yahweh. Ain't gonna be no lawyer to stand up and say, yeah, let's look at the good that this white man did in the earth. No, man. It's curtains, man. The jig is up. And let's get this. You got Proverbs. What is that? Proverbs 12 and 26. The righteous is more excellent than his neighbor, but the way of the wicked seduceth them. Right? So he seduced his own people, like I read Sirach 14 and 5. You got the one Proverbs 4, right? 16. For they sleep not except they have done mischief, and their sleep is taken away unless they cause some to fall. For they eat the bread of wickedness, and they drink the wine of violence. And then there's Proverbs 16 and 29. A violent man enticeth his neighbor, and leadeth him into a way that is not good. He shutteth his eyes to devise forward things, moving his lips, he bringeth evil to pass. And I want to get this one more. This is Proverbs. Because what these devils has done, now everybody's complaining. This is Proverbs 26 and 28. A lying tongue hateth those that are afflicted